Shalom, shalom. My name is Barney de Klerk. I'm making this video to talk about this week's scripture portions, specifically the Torah portion called Vayikra. It is the first 5 chapters of the book of Leviticus, and it goes hand in hand with a portion from Isaiah 43 and 44 and a gospel portion from the book of Matthew, chapters 20 to 30 or to 37. Regarding Leviticus, in Jewish tradition, children are started on reading the Bible, the Tanakh or the Torah with the book of Leviticus. And what I understand is that they put a little bit of honey on the pages of the book of Leviticus so that when the children touch the pages and they touch their mouths, they learn through experience that the word of God is sweet as honey. And to take in Adonai's instructions is a sweet experience. It's a wonderful tradition, and I want to appeal to you, if you don't have honey, then why not have a little bit of chocolate? The association will be the same. There's another interesting thing in the book of Leviticus. Its translators fixed the complicated Hebrew syntax in the book. But if you look at the Hebrew text, the book of Leviticus starts with "and". Now, how can you start a book with that letter "and"? We learn normally not even to start a sentence with "and". But the "and", the vav in Hebrew, it is a hook that's attaching to something. And you can ask, what does it attach to? And it attached to the book of Exodus. The Torah is a unit. The book of Leviticus doesn't hang in the air. It's the middle of 5 books as the 3rd book. It's not airy-fairy pie-in-the-sky stuff. It's hooked onto the Exodus, and it's hooked onto the magnificent book of Numbers, Numeri, and then those books are hooked onto Genesis and onto Deuteronomy. The Torah is a complete unit. If you think about the teaching from last week, the book of Exodus ends on a high. It's like a television series where an end of one episode ends at such a high note that you cannot wait to start to watch the next episode. It's a hook. And the Torah is like that. Exodus ends on this high note. You cannot wait to see what's happening next. The high note is that the tabernacle is finally finished and erected, and the glory of Adonai descends into the tabernacle, and not even Moses could enter. And you have to say, how can this be? The tabernacle was built to act as a gateway for people to interact with Adonai, Eloheinu. And now the glory of Adonai is there. Not even Moses can go in. How does it work? Our plan failed. But the tension at the end of Exodus is relieved in the beginning of Leviticus. In Leviticus, we learn about what the difference is between purity and impurity, and between holy and unholy. There is, and the book teaches how to move from impurity to purity and unholiness to holiness, so that we can engage with the God of Israel, with the Creator God, with Adonai Eloheinu, to take the tension of Exodus away from us and to open the way. And in that, I'm sure you can see that the tabernacle is representative of Yeshua the Messiah as well. In the prophet portion, I spoke a little bit about the Aleph Taf. It's hidden in English translations of the Bible, mostly because Bible translators doesn't know who the Aleph Taf is. Adonai or Elohim Aleph Taf is foreign to them. So they say it's untranslatable, and they edit him out of the Bible. But he's there. And he is more visible in the Hebrew text than in the English or other translation text. In these 5 chapters of Leviticus, there are 4 instances where Aleph Taf occurs, where it is not translated. I want to say Aleph Taf have 2 meanings. The primary meaning from Genesis 1 verse 1 is the God of creation, because in Genesis 1 verse 1 in the Hebrew text, it's Elohim Et, Elohim Aleph Taf, who created the heavens and the earth. And that's the primary meaning. But the secondary meaning for Et means the one and unique thing that of which there's no copy. It's truly unique and special. So the 4 Aleph Tafs in this Torah portion is 3 times, actually it's 4 events, but the first one of the 3 is 3 times in Leviticus chapter 1 verse 8. The Kohanim Aleph Taf, the pieces on the altar. The Kohanim Aleph Taf, it means the priest of God, the priest of the God of creation, the priest who's in service of Aleph Taf. It points to Yeshua, who is our ultimate high priest. He is the Aleph Taf. The Kohanim is a foreshadow of Aleph Taf, the ultimate high priest. And then in Leviticus 2 verse 14, to offer Aleph Taf the grains of your first fruit is what it says. So your offering of your first fruit is up to Aleph Taf, the God of creation. And in Leviticus 4 verse 17, the blood is sprinkled towards the holy place in the tabernacle, is sprinkled 7 times before Adonai Et. Again, who's Adonai Et? Adonai Et is Elohim Et. It is the God of creation. It is Yeshua. Please listen to the prophet portion. I explain the Aleph Taf a little bit more there. But the blood sprinkle before Adonai Et or Elohim Et, the reason is clear. It refers to Yeshua's blood that was sprinkled to atone for our transgressions. And then in Leviticus 4 verse 21, it says the priest who has to carry Aleph Taf, the bull, out of the tabernacle to outside the camp. Carry the bull? Can you imagine putting a huge bull, a Brahman or even a red heifer, who's not so big, but can you imagine putting a 500 kilogram bull on your shoulders and carry it out of the camp? So what is this? And the Hebrew word used in the text is par, and par means a bull calf, whilst the Hebrew word for a bull is shor, and shor often is translated as ox. There's no tradition amongst the Jews in the Bible or in modern Israel to maim animals, so shor always means bull and not ox. But here the Hebrew word is par, so it's not a bull, it is a calf that is carried out of the tabernacle and out of the camp in order to be sacrificed. Remember that to carry it, the bull in Hebrew, the ancient Hebrew, the letter Aleph represents a bull's head. That's something that plays into the golden calf event as well. So the bull that's carried outside of the camp to be slaughtered, it refers to Yeshua. He was crucified outside of the camp, outside of the city, on Golgotha. And all of this links to our prophet portion, as I said at least twice before. In the prophet portion and in the book of Revelation, Yeshua says he's the Aleph Tav. Let's have a very quick look at the Pardes reading of this Torah portion. Pardes means an orchid, but it's an acronym for different depths of exegesis into the text. In the Peshat exegesis, the simple direct instruction regarding different offerings and sacrifices are given to us. We have to remember that the word Torah means instruction. It doesn't mean law, although some instruction are given as law. And then in the Remez exegesis, is through his prescription of the sacrifices and offerings, we get the hint that Adonai wished to restore the broken relationship between him and every individual amongst us, especially with the nation of Israel collectively. And that is also confirmed again in the Darash exegesis. In the Darash, the root for offering or sacrifice is korban in Hebrew, or karaf, kuf resh vet. And it literally means to draw near, to approach, or to come close, or to be intimate, is karaf. Adonai's desire through the sacrificial system is that Israel would have intimate fellowship with him. And note that the sacrificial system is not so much about forgiveness of sin, but about Adonai's requirement for us to be clean so that we can have fellowship with him. And two of the three main types of sacrifices we read about in this portion is voluntary. And only one of the three types of sacrifice of offerings is compulsory. And that compulsory one is the sin offering. And it's about being made pure, turning impurity to purity, about turning unholiness into holiness, so that we can have intimacy with Adonai Eloheinu. Then let's look at the sod, or the secret, or the hidden exegesis. In the Hebrew text, there's, in the first couple of verses, first 3 verses, there's a number of syntax mistakes, where the construction of the sentence seems all muddled up. So we can ask, was it badly written by Moses? Or did Moses take dictation from Adonai, which I believe he did? And so was it Adonai who muddled up the sentence construction? And I'm quite sure that's not the case. So that means we have to look deeper into those verses to uncover the sod, the hidden secret exegesis. It starts with an unidentified speaker in the third person calling to Moses. Vayikra means to draw near, to come close, come listen to me. But the person is not identified. We know from later on in the text that it's Adonai who spoke to him. But the significance firstly is that just as Adonai speaks to us, he calls us in a small quiet voice, in our conscience or in our gut, in our feeling, in our dreams. And if we respond to him, then we drew closer to him. If we reject that, we grow further apart from him. When we honestly seek him, he draws closer and he finds us. And then we read in the second verse, there is a man, an ish, that brings an offering. It says, when a man brings an offering. And again, the construction of the sentence is all muddled up in Hebrew. So it begs the question, who is this man? Is it just any man, or is it a specific man who is not identified? And I will tell you, we can later on identify who it is, because it's a very specific man. It's pointing, I'll let the cat out of the bag, it's pointing to Yeshua, who is, and his sacrificial death on the cross. That's what it's talking about. To understand this, you have to remember last week's prophet's portion from Ezekiel 45 and 46. It is during the millennial period, the new temple is constructed. Only the prince enters through the east gate to bring sacrifices, offerings. The rest of us goes out or comes in and out the north and the south gates, but only the prince enters in the east gate. Now this mysterious man at the tabernacle, he brings his sacrifice, and at the entrance to the tabernacle. Why at the entrance? Why not inside on the altar? Hasn't the altar been designed for that? From Ezekiel 45-46, we know that the prince will bring his sacrifices, he will worship at the east gate, and after he goes out, then people will draw close to the east gate and also worship there, but they will not go in. The prince will go in and out through the east gate. Why is the east gate linked to the tabernacle? Because the tabernacle have always been set up with the entrance, only one entrance, but the entrance were facing east. I want to make a point that if we fail to understand Leviticus, then we also fail to understand what Yeshua did. We should have a quick read, and I didn't look it up, of Hebrews 10, verse 26 to 31. Let me find that quickly. It's after Timothy, I know. Hebrews 10, verse 26 to 31. Listen to this. For if we keep on sinning willfully after we have received the knowledge of the truth, there no longer remains a sacrifice for sin, but only a terrifying expectation of judgment and a fury of fire about to devour the enemies of God. Anyone who rejected the Torah of Moses dies without compassion on the word of 2 or 3 witnesses. How much more severe do you think the punishment will be for the one who has trampled Ben Elohim underfoot and has regarded as unholy the blood of the covenant by which he was made holy, and has insulted the Spirit of grace? For we know the one who said, vengeance is mine, and I will repay, and again Adonai will judge his people. It is a terrifying thing to fall in the hands of the living God. That is important. Hebrews 10, verse 26 to 31. So let's remember that. I also want to say, remember Hebrews 10 verse 26 to 31. When false teachers tell you that the Torah has been done away with, it is not the case. Go read Hebrews 10 verse 26 to 31. Don't let them lie to you. People who say the Torah is done away with, they are preparing the way for the man of lawlessness, the Antichrist. You should have nothing to do with them. The offerings in Ezekiel and here in Leviticus is about re-establishing the relationship between Adonai and his chosen people. I have said something in the video in the prophet portion about who the chosen people is. Please listen to that. There are 3 main types of sacrifices. I'm going to talk about it briefly in inverse order. Because it's like a building that's built, a foundation established, then the walls built, and finally a roof put on top. And the book of Leviticus describes it from the top down. I think it makes more sense for us to understand it from the bottom up. So the third one is the sin offering, chet. It is not a negotiable sacrifice, but it's prescribed and instructed. To understand the sin offering, we have to think of the first sin, the original sin. Remember, that's when Adam and Eve, or Adam and Chava, ate the forbidden fruit in the garden, and for that they got expelled. Sin, therefore, thinking of Adam and Eve, is to take something that does not belong to us, something that belongs to Adonai, and we take it for ourselves. That means you disrespect his authority. It is a lack of respect in the most basic sense, to take what belongs to Adonai and to use it for ourselves. Taking his name in vain is another example of a commandment that explores the same topic. So when we steal something from Adonai, when we disrespect him in this manner, the sin offering is our way to give something back to him, to compensate for the disrespect we have given to him. And the sin offering is given both to him and to his representatives. His representatives, excuse me, are the priests who serve in the temple. Part of the sin offering is burnt, so Adonai eats that. But most of the sin offering is eaten by the priest. So if you like, the priest becomes like the sin eater, the eater of your sin offering or your sin. In the sin offering, the animal stands in the place of you. You say, I deserve to be cut up and killed like that. But instead of me, I'm offering this animal to stand in my place. And that offering forms the basis of the sacrificial system. It's the foundation. It reestablishes the respect, the basic respect for Adonai, to respect what is his, what is holy, what belongs to him. Then the middle of the three sacrifices that's discussed in these 5 chapters of Leviticus is the fellowship offering, or the shalom offering. It is a voluntary offering, and it's about community. The bringer of the sacrifice, together with the priest and together with Adonai, all partake in this offering. So you bring the offering, it is slaughtered, part of it's burnt, Adonai eats that, part of it belongs to you and your family, you eat that, and with you the priests are eating as well. You have community. It is all about love. And that is like the walls of the house that's built on the foundation of respect. And then we look at the burnt offering. The burnt offering is also entirely voluntary. The bringer offers it up without asking anything back in return. It's all burnt up. The guy bringing the offering does not partake in it. He doesn't eat any of it. The priests, as Adonai's representative, they don't eat any of it. It's all burnt up. Adonai is the only one who eats it, who consumes it. And that is the next level up from the walls onto the roof. It is about awe. It's about worship. So the 3 types of sacrifices built from the sin offering as the foundation, from the fellowship or offering as the walls of your relationship with Adonai, to the burnt offering, which is awe, worship in awe, holy worship of Adonai Eloheinu. The key message of Leviticus is that Adonai seeks a relationship with you as an individual. And whilst the relationship sometimes goes through deep waters and gets damaged and broken, Adonai's instruction in Leviticus teaches remedies for the brokenness and for repairing the relationship. It is akin to a breach clause in a commercial contract. It really is about avoiding the eternal consequences by re-establishing the relationship, by fixing the wrongs. And from this Torah portion, we learn the legal principle that applies in modern law today as well, that ignorance of the law is no excuse. That relates to the sin offering. If you're not aware what the law says and you transgress, you are guilty. You're not innocent because you didn't know. You are guilty, but it is not willful sin. It is unwitting sin. And therefore, there's a sacrifice that atones for it. There is no sacrifice for willing sin. If you know something is wrong and you do it, there's no sacrifice to atone for that. There is so much more, and a lot of it is hidden in the text. As an example, I want to say that in Hebrew, there's two different types of fat, chalef fat and shuman fat. But in English translation, it's only fat, and it says don't eat the fat. But there's a difference in the Hebrew. In the Hebrew, you can eat the chalef fat. You're not allowed to, no, the other way around. The chalef fat is the internal fat on the organs. You cannot eat that. But the shuman fat is the fat that's on the red meat, on the muscles, the external fat. And that you can enjoy when you have a braai or a barbecue. Eat that fat. By all means, it's healthy for you. It's even spiritually good for you. But I'll leave that for you to study and discover for yourself. The question then, of course, is at the moment there's no temple. So how do we bring restoration? And the absence of a temple is temporary, because in the millennial reign, Yeshua will re-establish a temple. It will be rebuilt, and the temple service will be reinstituted. Go read Ezekiel 45 and 46 if you don't believe me. Until then, we have Yeshua, whose sacrifice on the cross was the ultimate sin offering, to open the door for us to have communion with our Heavenly Father. And in a scenario that I'm not going to explore now, but all three these type of offerings that I spoke about is fulfilled in His crucifixion. Please read these first 5 chapters of Leviticus for yourself. Read it attentively. I pray that Adonai will bless you and keep you, and that He will keep you from the enemy, protect you from the enemy. I pray that Adonai will smile lovingly on your prayer offerings, and that He will be gracious to you. I also pray that Adonai will provide for your every need, as He's already provided for your salvation through Yeshua the Messiah. And I pray that He will complete you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom.